Welcome to MS Talks, where we discuss the important, the interesting and the useful tailored to you. And today I'm joined by Lawrence and Ella. I just need to let you guys know this is not my glass of Coca-Cola.
We're not, they don't even need to know it's Coca-Cola. It could be sarsaparilla or...
That is not sarsaparilla.
But today we've got some really interesting things to discuss. But before we get going, we are all professionals here. However, I need all of you guys to do your own research. What we talk about is opinion led, even though there will be some factual things in there. And this goes for anything you see on the internet. Always do your own research and find out what is meaningful to you and what you see to be as maybe factual or your own opinion. So, what's today then?
What are we doing first?
We're going to talk about, is the gender pay gap a myth?
Go on, Lawrence.
You can't start with a man. You
Yeah,
can't.
because
Why not?
so we
cool.
obviously probably know what we think.
Yeah.
But from a man's point of view, when you hear the gender pay gap, and it's been buzzing around for a while now.
Yeah, it's become one of those terms. Hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it's those terms.
Hashtag gender pay gap.
Yeah, gender pay gap, and it's often used by feminists, but I feel like it's not only feminists now. It's something that a lot of people, you know, are women being paid the same amount of money as men?
No, they're not.
Okay.
It's one of those things where I've sort of drifted from one side to the other and sort of back again, because the data has changed and the way people analyse it has been there's been two camps, right? I think the part that I'll say is largely a myth is where it started, which was something like, because men are discriminating against women, they're paying them less, full stop in the story. And
That's the bit that you don't agree with.
That's the bit that has now been shown to be, by and large, untrue. There's an interesting study that Uber did in 2018, and because it's all like algorithms and like there's no way to like build in a gender bias, they found that there was a pay gap still of about 7%, and it was like half of it was assigned to men just driving faster, part of it was that women, because we do, right? Part of it was that women drive at different times, at times that are less dangerous. So the peak times of Friday and Saturday nights, you can imagine a woman feeling uncomfortable driving at those times. So other factors were feeding into why women were getting paid less. It wasn't necessarily that people were discriminating against them, but the structure around like when they'd feel more comfortable, for example, fed into them ending up with less money per hour.
So do you think when we see the gender pay gap that there's a misconception or a misunderstanding? Because what usually is brought up in the media or headlines is, like I said previously, women are paid less than men and that's it. And like you said, there's so many factors. So the official definition of the gender pay gap is the percentage difference between hourly earnings for men and women. Now, what a lot of people, when I look on social media or I see a lot of debates taking place, it's generally thought that if I, let's say, I'm an IT specialist as a woman, and Lawrence is an IT specialist as a man, I hope, that we don't receive the same payment. Now, because I'm a woman, I'm paid less just because I'm a woman, and that's not true. So I think the understanding, and whether it's the responsibility of newspapers or people that debate these topics, I think the majority of people, that's what they think it is. For the same job as a woman, I'm being paid less. And again, it's not true.
Yeah,
Where what it is actually, factors such as, okay, let's look at the highest paid jobs.
Yeah, and the fact that men dominate them more. Absolutely.
And the lowest, exactly, in the lowest paid jobs.
Yeah.
And if you take a company, what they do is they don't look at the specific titles, they look at, okay, let's just look at the percentage overall.
And that's the problem, is how the data's founded. Yeah, it's occupation's actually not taken into the equation.
Occupation is not taken into the consideration.
Yeah.
So if you have lots of, let's say, for example, executives, accountants, and then you have like receptionists, you have secretaries. Obviously, receptionists and secretaries are paid less than accountants and, let's say, IT specialists. So it's not doing like for like with the actual role or the position.
I have a question though. Is there a element of discrimination that leads to most of the executives being men and most of the secretaries and the receptionists being women?
I believe that there is. The problem is how do you justify that? Like, where is the evidence to justify it? Because we've got the Equality Act, which obviously states that it's illegal to pay men and women different for the same role. But of course, it's illegal for people to sell drugs, and they still do. So the problem is like, how do you find it? My issue is with the data specifically. So for example, the data is based on all of the businesses within the UK. Now, the majority, so the data in which that they have to declare on what men and women earn or what they are paid is in businesses that have over more than 250 employees. But that only makes up 7,000 of all businesses in the UK.
True.
So what is going on with the other 5.8 million that we're not looking at the data at? So it's very fair to say that there could be discrimination. It's just that if we go on the data specifically relating to the gender pay gap, then it proves that there isn't.
But I think also there are situations where women would like to go for positions which are male dominated, but they don't feel they can. So for example, traders usually are men. But then women may feel uncomfortable that the majority of people on the trading floor are men. So then who's to blame for that? Is that, should we be empowering women to say, doesn't matter if they're all men? It's the same sort of, a weird example would be, a lot of girls and women I know, they don't want to go to the weight section in the gym.
Yeah.
So because you don't use the weights in the gym, is that the men's fault that you don't want to walk over, or is it the women's fault that you just don't have
don't feel comfortable
the confidence
enough?
or the comfortability to go to the weight section? So should men make you feel comfortable as they come over to the weight section, or do you see what I mean?
Where does
It's a
the
bit of both,
responsibility lie?
Because if the first time you go to the squat rack, every man is staring at you, you might not want to go back. So it is a bit of both. There's stories of women working in heavily male-dominated areas where they do have to deal with a lot of shit. So whatever. So it's like, it's a bit of both. If men are making it more comfortable for women, and this applies in terms of race and everything else, they're making it more comfortable. I think it'd be easier for someone to feel comfortable.
But I think we need to take into account as well that, okay, maybe over decades, centuries, women may start to evolve, but fundamentally, biologically, we are nurturing creatures. So also another factor that they don't actually look at when it comes to the gender pay gap is how many women actually have part-time jobs to be mothers or to raise young children. And that's not taken into consideration. So when they do the medium or the percentage, of course a lot of women are going to take home less money because you're working 2 to 3 days a week, which you requested, so you can do the school run, so you can look after your children.
Yeah, I think this is a big part of it, because when they look at the age difference between the gender pay gap, when you're in your 20s, there isn't much of a difference. There is in some industries, and it still exists, but the big chunk of it happens after childbirth.
28 to 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then once you've lost that sort of prime time, you can't really catch up in your 40s and 50s. The execs have got 20 years experience, and you're sort of...
And that's why I always say we women should be encouraged to do anything they want to do. But there's never going to be that equality, because until men have clocks, or until our clocks are extended until 65, 70 like you guys, there's a prime time for us to have children. Like if you go on the NHS website, it clearly states if you decide to have children after 35, you are a high risk mother. And the likelihood of your child having Down syndrome increases. So all those factors
play a massive part,
come into play. And all the companies I've worked at, and because I'm a contractor, I've worked in so many companies, I don't hear the conversation. I'm not saying women don't exist, but I don't hear the conversations of, I'm going to make sure that, you know, I get this increase. So I'm going to stay till 9 o'clock tonight so I can get that bonus, so I can be moved up the ranks. And my desire is to be like head of department. It's more like, oh, do you know what? Got to go and get the kids, or, you know, I've just moved in with my boyfriend. We're going to plan a family. Like, those are the conversations I tend to hear from women. Again, I'm not saying every woman is like that, but that's my experience. So whether we like it or not, you can't get to those positions and that sort of salary with trying to split your time with being the homemaker. So going back to the highest paid jobs, pilots is the highest paid job, I think, in the UK.
Yep.
Now, to be a pilot, you are away from home a lot. So are flight attendants, but generally speaking, going back to the age thing, flight attendants usually are quite young.
Yeah, true.
And then you have to look at the type of exams that they have to do. It's massively demanding. Again, I'm not saying women can't do it, but if you are considering your clock as a woman, you do want to have children, are you willing to do heavy duty exams every 6 months?
Here's my question then. Okay, so most people would have a look, like, would say we need to balance male and female roles in the home,
This is what I was going
right?
to say, yeah. Society hasn't set up the workplace for, like, what a prime example is
you
the
want to
fact
be a
that
house husband, huh?
Slyly.
But yeah, society hasn't set it up. Women get 9 months maternity, men get what? How much is it at the moment?
no,
Because
I
they
didn't
just
get
recently
it.
increased it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a couple of weeks
Yeah.
in comparison. So the workplace isn't set up for women to be able to manage both. You know, if you need to take time off, it's considered as time off. It's not a different schedule on the same pay. It's less hours, so therefore you're paid less.
But
My
it
other
can't be
question-
the same. You can't do, I mean, you can, but again, are we then falling short with how we raise children? Because, okay, if we completely split down the middle the baby's responsibility between the man and the woman at home, yeah? How is breastfeeding going to happen? Or even when women give birth, they release oxytocin, which is an attachment chemical. Men do not have that in the same way. So you need those crucial early years to be able to nurture your child.
So 2 things. One, like, there's no way that I need the same amount of recovery after having a child that a woman does. So
There
I
you
don't know
go.
if it's even fair.
Fair-
Like some
fair
women
point.
go right back to work, but lots need like a while to just get their body back into a place where
Absolutely, yeah.
they're comfortable. Even.
Yeah.
So, like, we should have the choice, but the idea that most people would choose it 50-50, that we'd end up anywhere in the middle, isn't even realistic. But my other point is maybe, and you might roll your eyes. Don't roll your eyes.
I will with his nonsense coming out of your mouth.
Like, the idea that we put so much value on things that are just about making money is what I think causes the issue in the first place.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be
Where are we
broke.
going here?
I know, I don't want to be
broke.
broke either. But
Yeah.
what I mean is, women are put in a place where they've got a dual pressure. Like, either you're
No. We're not put in a place where there's dual pressure. We decide to take on that pressure. Of course, I know there's some women that can't help it if they don't have the man around. But if there is a man who's bringing in a substantial amount of money, where he might have that conversation, you don't have to work for the next 5 years, that's for us to know, I want to work and I want to do the home caring and I want to. So oftentimes I feel like we want to take on that pressure. We want to be super women. We want to be highfalutin industry women. We want to be mothers. We want to be like multifaceted women. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but let's not act like victims as women, like, oh, the pressure. Like, we decide to do that.
Let me rephrase. What I mean is, no one rates stay-at-home mums anymore.
Yeah, but that's society that's done that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a case where no one rates. Yeah, I think there's a trend to now be an independent woman and get back to work
There's a difference,
and
though.
etc.
There's a difference. Like, if there's a woman who's had a very good career up until a certain point, so let's say up until, I don't know, 28, 29, which is still perfectly fine to have children, yeah? She's gone to university, or she's created her own business, or she's, like I said, had a good career. Then she decides to take five years out, then pick up after that. I don't think anyone's going to look down on that, and whoever does, like people in life are always going to look down on you for something. You're a highfalutin woman. Oh, look, she doesn't even have a man. Oh, she doesn't even have a child yet. Blah. You decide to be at home. Oh, look at her, stay-at-home mum, no education, no career, dependent on the man. What I'm saying is you can't win. So you have to do what's best for you and your household.
What I mean is you can't win. There's pressure on both sides. That's kind of my point. Like if you decide to not pursue your career at 28, 29, which is kind of early in someone's career. I feel like most people career-wise find their feet in their mid-30s. If you look at salary earnings, whatever, they start climbing after your mid-30s. And to stop it at the start of that sort of prime time is a difficult choice. And if you want to, that you're stuck between, career person or homemaker.
You have a young child, don't you?
Yes, I don't see why it has to stop.
How old is your child?
He's 2.
And do you work full time?
Yeah, and I work full time.
So who's with Baba?
So he goes to nursery. So basically my setup was a case of I took obviously maternity leave right up until he was about 9 months, and then I kind of started doing like some part-time work at home, like some consultancy, freelancing work or whatever. And then literally it was like, okay, I'm ready to go back to work now. And then I went back to work.
Was that because you were getting bored? Or?
It was a combination. So it was a combination of I wanted a bit of independence back. I wanted to be more active. And also I was really sort of reflective of who I was as a person. Yes, I can nurture and breastfeed and X, Y, and Z as much as I want. But in terms of giving him the stimulation that he requires, there's only so much that I can do. So I was more than happy for him to go to nursery. Yeah. So it started off at a point with like family helping out. And I appreciate not everyone has like the same support system. But it was a case of I know I can't take advantage of the people around me forever. So I'm going to work and earn enough until I can put him in nursery. Yeah. And that's literally what I did. So I think it's for women to be really honest with themselves about what they want and maybe map out like, okay, cool, I want children, but do I want children and I want to be at home and be a mum for the next 5 years with no career? Or do I want a career, and where does children and career fit in with each other? One doesn't necessarily have to replace the other, but how are they going to coexist? And then does the role that you're in or the industry that you're in support that? Like I'm quite lucky that the industry that I'm in, I'm self-employed, but I work underneath a brokerage. I've got a really supportive team. You know, like, yes, it's male dominated, but funny enough, the team that I'm in is majority women. We've got one man. And why is it that we've got one man? I don't know, maybe he's scared because the rest of the women in the team are all like doing really well. A lot of us are mothers, so we kind of get it. So I think it's about being really honest. What situation am I in and how am I going to make this work? Rather than like you were saying, okay, I want to have children and now I'm being punished because I want to be a mum. Like we've got, what's her name? Wolf Herd, just turned billionaire and etc. Like there's women out there that are making it happen. So it's not to say that it can't. It's just you have to be honest with your situation.
But I think also there's a lot of, people don't really talk about this. Usually the conversation is around like working class, bad parenting because of like lack of education, lack of finances. But what about those highfalutin middle to upper class or middle class families where the mother and the father is at work all day long? There's some nanny or like nursery all the time, not just like the set hours, but someone raising their child. And that child may have all the money, may have all of the karate, ballet, horse riding, all the rest of it, but they actually feel neglected by their parents.
But who said they feel neglected?
Well,
my thing is, who are we to judge? Until the child raises their hand and says, I feel neglected, mum and dad, you're working too much, then I think there's too much judgment of parents amongst each other, or people who aren't parents.
I hear that, but
like there's an ideal on how to raise your child. Absolutely, there is an ideal. Like spend X amount of time working, X amount of time with your child, be able to take time off, etc. Be able to see them on their birthdays, be able to see them when they graduate, university, etc. But life just isn't ideal, and you're gonna get some women that are gonna work all hours of the day because they want to put their children in a better position than what they were put in, and that just isn't going to look like the ideal picture to someone else who then wants to be a stay-at-home mum for 5 years and then walk back into the industry and think, hold on, I was dominating this industry like 7 years ago. I don't care that it's changed. Now I'm back 5 years.
Do you not think
Can they welcome me with open arms?
A slight selfish element to that though, because I get what you're saying. There's no perfect handbook on how to raise your children, and at some point all parents will fall short. It's just natural.
Yeah,
You're not going to be a
100%.
perfect parent.
100%.
But just like how a lot of people say with the whole knife crime or issues surrounding youth violence, it's because there's one parent or the other, or the one parent is always at work. So then they start to fall victim to, you know, turning towards gang violence or hanging around with undesirables. Now, on the flip side, for middle to upper class, it's more turning to suicidal tendencies and to drug abuse from an early age, as opposed to the working class or the more families from deprived background is more about entering gangs. So you've got two situations where, okay, everything's financially lovely, everything's like maybe not so financially lovely, but two situations where the children is still being neglected. So my thing is, I understand if you have no choice on either side, you have to go back to work, whatever. But if you and your partner, if there is that nuclear setting, have decided, you know, let's have children and we're financially okay, isn't it a bit selfish for the woman to want to go back to work straight away?
Why just the woman?
Because the woman is the nurturing one. I don't know. Can milk come out your breast?
No,
Not all
but we've got
baby.
pumps
What,
now.
okay, so what about the women who can't breastfeed? What about the women that can't breastfeed?
Or
Yeah,
don't want to
good point.
breastfeed.
Good
Yeah, or don't want to
The-
breastfeed.
To me, it doesn't matter. I take your point that
Yeah.
children need their parents, and they can't just have nannies and
100%.
Yeah.
nursery. I get
And I
that.
think those people are people that are working very hard and
Yeah.
not very smart.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
because you're working a lot of hours to get a lot of income to then do what with
to
it?
do what with
There
it.
you go. There you
But
go.
I mean, that becomes that is their child. To me, the career people that focus purely on that, that's their passion. They just happen to have kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think if you've got the resources, you'd want to have an intimate relationship with your child, right?
100%.
And the kids that don't have that with their parents do miss out and do feel neglected. There are studies to show that increased drug abuse, what you were mentioning earlier, amongst well-to-do people, there's still a cost to be paid. But I don't know, it seems like a really, like, one, it shouldn't just be on the woman, because, I don't know, you might not actually, as an individual, we can talk generally and say most women are more nurturing than most men, but as an individual couple, you might not be as mothering as the father is fathering, right?
Yeah,
you might
absolutely.
be better at dealing with him.
No, that's definitely true. But going back to the gender pay gap, I think what society has done is being extremely reactionary, especially online, to what they think the gender pay gap is, and there's not a lot of ownership or responsibility on the women, but also maybe on the men. Instead of just saying the system, blah blah blah. Well, okay, if you want to see different in terms of percentages for women to earn more than the man, then start going for those positions. Decide, okay, when I leave school, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a pilot, I want to be those sorts of high paid jobs. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
But
biologically, if we're more nurturing, then naturally we're going to go into more nurturing roles, like being in education or nursing and things like
teaching,
that.
Health and social care, they're all at the lower scale.
Yeah, and it is proven that within those industries, the gender pay gap is less. It's much less. I think in education, it's only 1%, whereas in construction and finance, specifically insurance, funny enough, the role that I'm in, is actually as much as 23%.
But do you know what's
So-
interesting as well? Sorry, Ella.
No, go for it.
What's interesting as well, it's not necessarily even a class thing, because like you said, construction, you have like, it differs now, but historically you would have the tradesmen that would be deemed as working class. But make no mistake about it, tradesmen earn a lot of money. Like, you have gas engineers that can earn anything up to like 80,000-90,000 a year.
Easily.
So even with that, it's like the huge gap between, let's say, what would you say is a working class job for a woman? I'd rather you guys say it than me.
No, go on, say it.
What's a, come on.
Cleaner, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, a cleaner, even I suppose like a carer.
Carer, definitely.
A
Okay.
carer, an NHS carer
Yeah.
is deemed as a working class job. You're never going to get, unless you're literally clocking up 70 hours, which is just not right, it's not right. But you're never going to make anywhere near a plumber or a gas engineer. So for me, before we wrap up, but if I was to say my advice to try and fix the gender pay gap, ladies, start being plumbers, go and be a pilot, be a gas engineer, like go for those positions that you know is going to jig the percentage of no longer being at the bottom financially, if the gender pay gap is such a big deal to us. What would your advice be?
For an individual, I'd say, yeah. First of all, choose your industry. Secondly, self-efficacy. I'm not sure to what extent this is a point, but there is an idea that women are less likely to ask for pay rises, less likely to push for promotions, etc. And men are sort of more boisterous about it and are more willing
I want
to
my
kick
money.
down the door.
I say that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. But having said that, though, that still then go down to the law? Like, for like what you were saying, if you've got IT engineer, one's male, one's woman, like.
It doesn't mean when I negotiate my pay rise
Yeah.
at the end of the year, and if the man does it and the woman is less likely to, then I'll probably push for more than she will and end up with more. And there's no law to stop that happening.
And as you're self-employed, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm self-employed. I'm a contractor.
Yeah.
So for my last 3 positions, because you get chatting and I extract information, I've been paid more than my male colleagues in all 3 positions. So this whole like men get more, it's not true, because I come in shrewd. When I'm contacted, hi, there's this contract, sometimes I risk it. Because sometimes if I go in too high, they'll say forget it, and then I miss the contract. But I'm willing to risk it. I've got to the position. I've worked my socks off. So when they come and say, this is just an example, okay, £50 an hour, I'm like, sorry, I only do £57 an hour. That we'll try, but they aren't. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Whereas when I speak to some of the guys, they're like, oh, I've got like a family at home. I couldn't risk like trying to barter and negotiate. I just needed to take the first hourly rate that was offered, whereas I never do. I'm like, no, I want £7 more, £8 more.
So is it then like a personality trait of women,
Yes.
or is it the value that's placed on the industries that women go into?
Both.
Oh, that's a good question.
Because women are raising children if they're in the education sector, but they're paid less in comparison to men who are in construction, who are building buildings.
We just, as women, we need to be a bit more ballsy. Like, have
That's
a bit
such a
more.
good
But then
term.
that's going against
I know,
our
I know.
biological nature, though, isn't it? Being
Just
ballsy.
I know.
Do you
But,
see?
you know, gender neutral.
So in order to get paid more, we need to be more like men.
Okay, well, that's a very like outdated term, but we need to have our mouths more. When we're at home arguing with our man, our mouth is big and flapping in the breeze. So when it comes to asking for money, use that same attitude that you're beefing your man, or who's that texting your phone. Take that to the agency. So that brings us to the end of our discussion surrounding the gender pay gap. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and if you haven't followed our page already, it's money station __. Once again, that's money station __. Thank you.